Welcome to the Maria Liberati Show, where food meets art, travel, and life. So what does food mean to you? Well, hopefully you had a great and delicious Thanksgiving. And stay tuned for my guest this week. I have Sousan Abadian, who is a Native American expert. And in honor of Thanksgiving, because our first host for Thanksgiving, the first real host of the real first Thanksgiving was Native Americans. And we're celebrating the month of November that we're just coming out of was Native American Heritage and Culture Month. And in December, we celebrate the Winter Solstice, which is something that is celebrated by Native Americans. So I thought it'd be great to have an expert on that can give us some insight, a little bit of insight on the first Thanksgiving and interesting insight on another culture of Native Americans. And our second guest is Dorothy Graham Odell. She's a motivational expert, and she's also the author of a book called The Overcomer. And I'm going to share a recipe that was part of my Thanksgiving table. And it's also from my book, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking, Da Vinci Style. So please stay with us. So one of my favorite recipes for my Thanksgiving table this year, and actually every year, it's called a torta di farro, or a farro cake. That's farro, which is spelled F-A-R-R-O, and is a grain that is used for this cake. And this recipe it's an uncommon recipe. It's great for this time of the year. It also brings to mind Italy's past. And farro is a grain that has been around since ancient times. You can serve this with a wine called Vin Santo, which is another wine from Italy's famous past that is still produced today. Or if you can't find Vin Santo, it's not that easy to find all the time. You can serve this with a sweeter wine. So the recipe is it only has, 6 ingredients. So not many ingredients, all real ingredients. And it is 4 eggs, 4 cups of farro flour, 2 cups of sugar, 1 cup of milk, 1 cup of Vin Santo. If you can't find Vin Santo, you can just use a sweet wine. 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Break all the eggs into a large bowl. Add the sugar and beat till foamy and the eggs have become a pale yellow. Add in the farro flour, a tablespoonful at a time, mixing well after each addition. Add in the milk and Vin Santo, or sweet wine, a little at a time, mixing well after each addition. Then add in the baking powder and mix well. Line an 8-inch cake pan with parchment paper and pour in the batter. Bake in an oven preheated to 350 degrees and bake for 30 minutes or until firm. You can also use a tube pan that has been buttered and floured. Remove from the oven when done and cool in the pan. Remove from the pan when cool and dust with powdered sugar and serve with Vin Santo or a sweet wine. And this recipe, as mentioned, can be found on my blog, but it's also in my book, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking, Da Vinci Style, which can be found on my website at marialiberati.com and the publisher's website, artoflivingprimamedia.com, and amazon.com, and really anywhere you can find books online. If you choose to make the recipe, which I hope you do, share a photo, hashtag it the Maria Liberati Show, and you'll be entered in a giveaway to win a copy of one of the books from the Basic Art of Italian Cooking book series. And we'll be sharing photos on my website, themarialiberatishow.com. And this month is Native American Heritage and Culture Month. And I love to honor different cultures. I think it's just so interesting. Each culture has brought to us many things that we may not be aware of. And today I have an expert on Native Americans and Well, Sousan Abadian she has a PhD from Harvard, and she's got such an interesting background. So she's going to share with us some things to honor this month, the Native American Heritage and Culture Month. Sousan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And I want to just honor you for noting this time and for drawing attention to Native peoples of this land, the original peoples of this land. So thank you, Maria, for your
Yes.
efforts on
Yes,
that.
definitely. Well, yes, that's right. They were the original peoples of this land. And I just want to digress a little bit. So I'm right outside, my home base is right outside of Philadelphia. It's like a rural area. And we have every day we're finding about so much history with Native Americans in this area. And it's always just so interesting. I never really realized, but yes, they were the first real inhabitants of our land. So it's very interesting. And I know I wanted to mention you actually did a was it a thesis that you were mentioning?
Yes, a doctoral thesis.
Yes.
Under a wonderful, I mean, I had several advisees, but one of them was the Nobel laureate in economics, Amartya Sen. And the doctorate itself was entitled From Wasteland to Homeland, Trauma and the Renewal of Indigenous Peoples and Their Communities.
Wow.
So it talked about the collective traumas that Indigenous peoples have endured, not just on this continent, but also all Indigenous peoples, many Indigenous peoples elsewhere,
Right.
and how that has affected their communities. And then that they're restoring themselves in various ways, collectively renewing themselves, culturally renewing themselves.
Right.
So that the thesis was basically that economists, I mean, I'm actually trained in economics and government, that economists need to pay attention to the fact that trauma and cultural renewal are an important part of economic development, that we cannot pour money into communities thinking that that's going to restore them if we don't also support them in restoring themselves and renewing their cultures and their peoples again.
Oh, yes. So one of the things that I always love to find out is maybe some history or things that, the culture brings to us that most people aren't going to be aware of or weren't aware of. So are there some things you can share?
Well, I also just want to say, I think you started off by saying that you are becoming aware outside of Philadelphia of the rich Native histories there. And I want to just encourage all the listeners to do that, wherever you are is at one point belonged to, I mean, Native peoples didn't think in terms of owning land.
Right.
They were guardians of land. And so they didn't have ownership. So they don't think that way. But the lands that you are on, once upon a time had Indigenous peoples who, and not that long ago, actually.
No, it's not that long ago.
That land was something that was very intimate and important to them. So all of us should go and find out who those people were, what their traditions were, and honor them in some way, because they generously, some of them by force, offered their land so that we can be here. And again, we're speaking positively here, but it was not a pretty picture. Many of them were coerced. Lands were taken away from them, so on and so forth. I know that you want to stay positive on this channel, but it wasn't a pretty picture. And I think it behooves us, those of us who are benefiting from being here. I'm an immigrant. My family came here when I was 5. I'm actually from a Indigenous community in Iran. So I'm from one of the 20,000 remaining Zoroastrian Iranians left. And we were the original peoples of Iran prior to the Islamic conquest. And so I'm an immigrant here, and maybe my own history of being an Indigenous person and the suffering that my people's experience makes me, more understanding and compassionate for the original peoples of this land. But I think it would be an important thing that we can all do to do what you've done or beginning to do, to really understand who were the people whose lands we're on. And how can we honor them and give something back to them? So, and I want to thank you for I just want to really appreciate you, Maria, because you're beginning this conversation on your channel. I appreciate that a lot.
Oh, yes, definitely. Well, as I said, I know, I have my culture I'm really proud of, and I try to do as much as I can to research and learn about my own culture, because I think culture, you need to be connected to your culture, whatever your culture is, but not only your culture, but it's really nice to find out about all the special things that of all the other cultures that are out there. They're just so
Yeah.
interesting. So I think that's really a really important thing anyway, which is why I like to do that. But yes, there's so many interesting like parks and things, which I'm assuming probably were originally first s- owned by indigenous people around the Philadelphia area. They've kept some of them, they've named after like tribes that might have been there. And they've but you'll go to the parks and there's signs, and they'll tell you a little bit about it. So it's just so interesting. But yes, it's definitely important, because I'm sure everywhere in this country that did occur, since they were the original settlers of our country. So it's really
Yeah,
important
inhabitants.
to find
They
that
really
inhabitants, yes. And it's important to find that out, because it's a foundation, and I always think your foundation is really, really important. So it's really the foundation of where you come from also.
absolutely,
So it's
absolutely.
definitely important.
There's so many. I don't know if you have a resource section. I should have asked you this before we began
Yes.
speaking, but because I could provide things, reading material for people who are interested in finding out more, and websites, and there's so many wonderful resources now, both in terms of finding out who lived, inhabited the region that you're in, and
Yes.
learning more about them. I mean, we just had Thanksgiving celebrations, and
Yes.
it has a very different perspective and tone from a Native American perspective,
Yes.
what that tradition is. And
Yes.
it would behoove all of us to learn about actually what did happen in 1621, 400 years ago, by the way. This is 400 years
Wow.
that supposedly that first
That first
Thanksgiving holiday
Thanksgiving.
was. So it'd be worth. The Wampanoag communities in Massachusetts are the ones who were the peoples who greeted those first pilgrims,
Wow.
supposedly. So they
Uh-huh.
have a whole section on their history, on what actually took place, and
Uh-huh. Hmm.
how they see Thanksgiving.
Wow.
And again, it's that in itself is a whole conversation, long conversation to be had. And I'm not the appropriate person to have it. I'm not indigenous to this continent, but
Yes.
there are many resources out there, and it would behoove all of us to really learn what the history is, the true history of
Yes.
what happened to indigenous
Yes.
peoples, and why they feel the way some of them feel the way they do. And I want to make the point that, of course, Native peoples on this land, let alone the continent, and indigenous peoples all over, there's such a variety, right? Even in the US, the
Yeah.
Native communities are very different from one another. You
Uh-huh.
can't generalize in any ways. And then
Yes.
also there's been a lot of mixing of peoples. One doesn't want to generalize about Native peoples, but there are certain things that one can speak about. Their history is of what happened after settlers came, and after
Yes.
conquest, the U.S. conquest of their communities.
Uh-huh.
That's been similar, and the trauma to them has had deleterious effects that one can generalize about. But their
Yes.
cultures are very distinct, and
Yes.
so beautiful.
Yes.
Foods, how they raised how they fed themselves, how they nurtured themselves. So all those things are very different and fascinating, and it would be really interesting for each of your community, your listeners, to go and
Yes.
see what were the original foods that were
Yes.
of the land.
Well, could you share with us? Do you have any insight on that? Like any?
For example, turkey was not part of the original meal, Thanksgiving meal.
Probably not.
It
Yes.
was probably geese, fowl, geese, or
Right.
duck and venison.
Yes.
So that sort of thing, squash,
Yes.
pumpkin, all those things, of course. There's a whole list. There's also a wonderful a chef. I think he's called the Sioux chef,
Uh-huh.
and his name is Sean Sherman.
Uh-huh.
And he's obviously an amazing chef, and he's written a book, but he's got a lot of he talks a lot about indigenous foods
Uh-huh.
And it would be worth looking him up and learning about that. He's fascinating. You might actually interview him. He'd be a
Oh,
fascinating.
yes, that would be a great idea. I'll have to
Yeah,
definitely look him up. But yes, also as a side note, if you do want to share any information or links with me, I'll put it on my website.
I will do that.
Because we have a
Absolutely.
website for the podcast, the marialiberati.show.com, and we'll include it there and on my website as well. So people can definitely find out more about the Native American culture and heritage. But it's interesting how I think many cultures, almost all cultures, there's always trauma. And it's, the way that they get over the trauma is interesting also, because each culture has its own variety of traumas, and not to what's the right word, not make it important the one that the Native Americans went through. But I think all cultures, it's kind of the same thing. There's a trauma, and then how they deal right with the trauma and getting over that. And but I know there's a lot of very interesting, as I was mentioning places to visit, and hopefully it sounds like, and you may be the person that would know, it sounds like that they're recovering, and things are kind of going along with people recognizing the Native American culture in this country more and more. Is that correct?
I think there's a beginning. I mean, we have for the first time, for example, Deb Haaglund, who's the minister, the Interior, Department of Interior, head of Department of Interior. And so we're starting to we're very beginning of having people in positions of authority in the government. So even that's
that's great
representation of something shifting. But I've written all about, I'm my expertise is, it's not what I intended it, but it turns out one of my expertise is collective trauma and the traumas that people have experienced and recovery from collective trauma.
Yes.
And the fact is there are different kinds of collective traumas.
Yes.
And some are worse than others.
And others.
And I mean, you don't want to compare anybody's traumas, right?
Right.
Saying if they drowned under 20 feet of water or 3 feet of water, they still drown.
It's still, yes.
Yeah. So I get that trauma is trauma. And yet there are types of collective traumas that are harder to recover from.
Yes.
So part of what the indigenous peoples, from my estimation, is some of the worst kinds of collective traumas that anyone could experience. And it's related to I don't know, most Americans don't know, we don't want to talk necessarily about this stuff, but it's important. It's not about feeling guilty or badly, but it's about really understanding all of our people. I mean, they're a community, the Native people. Right.
Exactly. Oh, yes.
And they've suffered inordinately. And one piece of history I'll mention, because most people don't know about this. We know about their lands being taken and their foodways being destroyed and all sorts of things, and not, from 60 to 90%. I mean, it's hard to even fathom this. 60 to 90% of their people were wiped out by the diseases that Europeans brought to this land. Wow. And we had 777 at this point, 777,000 people die from the pandemic. But that's, if we imagine 60 to 90%, 60%, 2/3 is 1 million something people die. Can you imagine that level of devastation? That's just the
back then. Yes.
2/3 of your community wiped out just from the get-go. Exactly. And then one of the other damages that most people don't know about, and I'm just going to bring this up lightly, but it's not light, is that by law, beginning in the 1890s, many children were forcibly removed by family. It was law for Native children to be taken to boarding schools away from their families.
Oh my God!
Basically, be Christianized and kind of have the Native beaten out of them. And many of these children, actually, the first generations of these children that were removed, 50% didn't survive these schools. They were that horrible.
Oh, wow.
And so there was a lot of abuse. And this went on for several generations before the law was changed. But can you imagine the damage to families and communities and to cultures where children were taken away into missionary and also military schools, and in many ways brutalized. And then returned back to their communities. They didn't speak they could not speak their language. They could not practice any of their culture. So this is a, so we saw an epidemic of alcoholism and other things devastate those communities, but who wouldn't want to numb themselves after those sorts of experiences? So we have to understand what these communities have been through. And they are, it's a real testament to their resilience that they are coming back in amazing ways, and they have so much to teach us. I mean, so much to teach us. And we have to respect and listen to them. And I think that's what I want to, emphasize.
I think it's important to obviously to know about the history and the foundation and things like that. But I think it's also important, to hear, to honor that, to honor the culture and the positive things that the culture brings to bring to us today, because thank goodness, we're not in those times now. So
that's right.
We're not, the people that did all that are not around. So we can kind of be on another level and, experience the knowledge and the wisdom and the culture, the benefits of their culture that they could bring to us. So that's what that's why I enjoy honoring different cultures and trying
so
to
beautiful that you do. And they have a lot to teach us about their relationship to the land, which we desperately need at this time. The honoring of the elements. I mean, we are the Western culture, as beautiful as it is and has so many valuable pieces to it as well. It has a dysfunctional relationship to the natural world in some ways. And
I love, one thing, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but one thing I love from what I understand. So they honor the trees, right? Don't they think of them as, is that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, indigenous peoples all over the world understand and honor. I mean, they may not have understood that. They call them the giving people. I mean, trees give everything to us. They give us oxygen. They give us foods. They give us, I mean, we couldn't survive without trees, right? They understood this. And so there was a lot of reverence for the natural world, and rightly so. And it wasn't about just taking from animals or from trees it was a lot of prayer and appreciation and respect. Before taking the life of an animal, after taking the life of an animal, it was just not done without thought and consideration for the life form that was there. And so the earth is considered sentient, and it's to be respected. The earth itself is our mother. Everything we have comes from it. And so how would we treat the earth differently if we really got that we can't just dig into her and pull out stuff, and if we just really honor the earth for what she has given us, it's a very different understanding. And so land becomes different, how the trees, we don't just cut trees randomly down, we don't just exploit things, we understand what they've given us. And so anyway, there's a real appreciation for animals, for trees, for even the rocks. They consider, some nations consider rocks as record keepers. I mean, if you think of it, they've been there before anything else. They've seen everything. They're the record keepers. They have seen from beginning of time to now.
That's absolutely right. When I started finding out about the way that they treat trees, after that, I look at trees a whole different way. And you almost, because I understand that, I think they actually talk to trees, and, because they revere them. And I just, I have to think many times before I cut one down anymore, because of thinking in the terms, that they make you think of, and you could understand, because it is a living, breathing thing, really. And you're right. It does give us so many things, but it's such definitely a
so beautiful.
Yes, it
is. You're so beautiful that you're open to this. And it's really, there's a lovely book by Jamie Sams
Uh-huh.
Anyway, I will put, she has something called the Sacred Path cards and
Yes.
animal medicine cards, and
Uh-huh.
it's a different perspective on animals, and some of the native teachings anyway might be worth having that as part of the resources that people look
Oh,
at.
yes, definitely. I would even, I would be very interested in that. But yes, if you have any links or anything that you want to send me, I'll definitely get it up when we air this podcast. I'll definitely get that up.
That's wonderful.
Well, this has been lovely. Thank you so much. But I want people to know where they can find you and get more information. Is it SousanAbadian.com?
That's so simple. www.Sousan, and Sousan is with an O, so SOUSAN
Yes.
ABADIAN.com, and they can sign up for newsletters and that sort of thing. And I'm looking forward to putting whatever resources I can on your website
Yes.
so people can follow. And by the way,
Yes.
we're all indigenous to the earth, and we at one point had, we were all connected in some of these ways to the earth.
Yes.
We've just forgotten it. And
Yes.
we've been misled in some ways. So
Yes.
we are all there, we can look at them as our teachers to remind us of who we really are and our relationship to the mother, to the earth mother.
Yes.
As you are. And we can still stay Italian, you want whatever, any culture we come from, and still remember that we have a relationship to the earth in a special way. So
that's our first culture, really, or our first real mother is Mother Earth, really, our, one of, I guess, that's our culture, really, is, our first culture, whatever other culture you respect. But yes, definitely. I've always said people need to be more connected to, the food and the earth and all that. It's people don't realize there's not a connection. And I think that's one of, our many issues today. People really need to feel, have that connection there. So
absolutely.
But yes, with all, if you can send us some links and all, maybe hopefully we'll get people to explore that even more.
Very good. And again, want to so appreciate that you have, first of all, honored me by having me here, but also are bringing attention to this, Maria. It's such a valuable, piece of work that you're doing.
And it's the month of November that is the, okay. So, well, this will probably air, but that's okay. That's okay. At least we were able to get it in. So that's very nice. Great. Yes. And thank you so much. And keep us posted on your, whenever your books come out, let me know. We'll have you back on. Great. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye. And my guest today is Dorothy Graham Odell. She's a published author, and she's a really interesting book that I think everybody can relate to. Part of the title is called The Overcomer. I'm going to let her tell you the whole title, but it has a great message about overcoming things. And as I said, I think we can all relate to this. Dorothy, I'm going to let you tell us, first of all, welcome and thank you for being here, but I'm going to let you tell us the full title of your book.
Sure. And again, thank you so much, Maria, for letting me be on your show today.
Yes.
The title of the book is called The Overcomer, Facing Challenges with Faith and Courage. It is my life story of how I overcame being bullied through school for my weight, which led to low self-esteem, which opened myself to allowing myself to be in abusive relationships, both professionally and personally, because I really didn't think I could get better. And family trauma, which my uncle took his life Christmas Day 23 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, and then my parents have been chronically ill pretty much my entire life. Anything from heart and stroke to diabetes to kidney failure. And my dad just passed away 2 months ago of cancer.
Oh,
so
sorry to hear that.
Oh, thank you. And it's just basically, it's a story I think that everybody can relate to. I know I'm not the only one that goes through these things, but I'm the only one that is sharing my story, because when you are in those dark moments, it really feels like you can be alone. Yes. And I just want people to know that you never have to be alone in those moments. And you are not the only one that is going through that. And I know for myself, when I was going through those deep, dark moments, I thought, I'm the only one. And I would put myself into such a shell, and I would not, my parents didn't even know half of what I was thinking or feeling or anything like that, because I was the type of person that would, protect my parents from me. Yes. So it's just, and I don't think I'm the only one with that. And that's why I'm out here sharing my message and my story, because I feel that, since I came out with the book in January, a lot of people saying, Dorothy, I can so relate. And that's why I'm out here doing this, sharing my story and helping other people to overcome, because I know I had a coach last July that said, if you don't share your story, then you're selfish, because we all have people connected to our lives. And by not sharing, we're not helping those people. So that has resonated with me deeply, because I'm the type of person that would sit in the back corner, hide from the world. I'm a people watcher. I observe everybody, but then, I don't know, there's some moments that I'm thinking, why am I doing this? But then I'll have somebody reach out and say, thank you, Dorothy, for sharing, because of you sharing, I got through the day, or something like that. So
and I do have to say, yes, you're not the only one. When I was in school, elementary school, I was bullied for my weight too. I was actually born very underweight. So my parents and grandmother kept feeding me, they were so concerned, and I ended up, I did have a weight issue when I was little, and I felt the same way. I was bullied. There weren't as much information around at that time about bullying, but I was bullied myself. So I can certainly relate to what you're saying. And yes, you feel alone. But I think the one thing I do want to say is that, yes, you do need to share when you overcome something like that, because overcoming it is actually like a gift. You have this talent. It's a talent and it's a gift. And to share that with other people so they know they can overcome that as well. So I think that's really great that you've decided to share your way, and you're absolutely right. I did the same thing. Like I really didn't let my parents know what was going on. I kind of stayed kind of sat in the corner and didn't really, talk about it a lot, because I think I wanted to protect them too, not really letting them know. And I ended up getting through it, in some way, shape, or form. But the thing is, as you're saying, when you overcome that, you're just going to feel so much stronger, I think, once you overcome it also, and you will feel more connected to people, because it's like, wow, I went through this. Not that it's a good thing. No one should I don't want anyone to have to go through that, but you will feel connected. Correct? Is that kind of
totally correct? And like you said, by sharing it, other people are, number one, mental illness has been on the rise for as far back as I was going through this, but no one ever talked about it. And I see lately now that they're talking more about mental health, but there's still that stigma around it. Like, if you get help, then you're a loser, or something's wrong with you. No, the ones that have the mental breakdowns are the ones that have been the strongest, the longest, and have kept their silence. But I mean, now that we're breaking out of the silence and allowing people to just be who they are, and being okay with that, and accepting people the way they are, I believe that it's created more of an army, and helping people bust through those stigmas. And it's really sad that we're in the 20th century and there's still that stigma. I mean, it should just be normal to have a coach or a mentor, or go to counseling. That should be normal. And as parents, we all want to do better than our parents did. So I grew up, like, my dad was very strict, but if you look back at what his dad was like way stricter than my dad. And that's growing up, that's all I knew. So when I have my stepson, it's just like, wow, it's a whole new area. But we can't, we try and do better, but then we're just sometimes creating more of a problem, because we want them to have more than what we did, but then they turn out to be spoiled.
Well, I think that, the thing that I do have to say, yes, my dad was somewhat strict, and then his dad was really strict, but you're saying we want to do better, but sometimes there are some things that you can look back on. Now, I don't have kids, I have nieces, and they stay with me a lot, and I have lots of friends that have kids, so I'm always trying different approaches and things. But some of the ways of, like, our father and grandfather and all that, yes, they were strict, and they certainly didn't have a lot of the ultra education that most of us can afford to get today, because they couldn't afford that. But there are some old ways that provide a good foundation that, even though, better, I think there's a fine line also, what's better, I understand what you're saying. There are a lot of new approaches today that exist that are great, but there are some things that I still think I look back on, the things that my parents did, that provided a really good, solid foundation that I think we really can't ignore. Because sometimes obviously it's great that there are those counselors, but on the other side, sometimes I feel that people like run to counselors, they're over available, and there are so many things you can do on your own to kind of calm yourself. And so I don't know that it's great that they're there for people that absolutely need them, but I don't think it's a good thing that people use that as a crutch and they don't try to do things on their own. Just small things sometimes, like taking a walk or enjoying, the fresh air outside, or there's so many ways to relax yourself. And again, people that have very serious issues, you definitely, and I'm not trying to say there's a stigma with, I think it's great to go to coaches and counselors if you definitely need it. But on the other hand, so I guess it's a fine line, but it's great that it is available for people that do feel that they need that. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And some of the old, foundation ways I think that our parents and grandparents had still have some merit. Of course, there were some things we all know they do not, but I think there are some things that you probably still, can find, value in. And I hold very dear, things, certain ways that I think, wow, why aren't people doing that? And thinking that's outdated. I think that's a great, approach. But anyway, getting back to, yes, I think it's a very good, thing that you're sharing with people on how to, be strong and overcome. Any like tips or anything you want to add in, or things from your book you can tell us?
Absolutely. And I guess one of the main things, what I hold dear that my parents gave me was a very strong work ethic and never giving up.
Yes.
Whether you call that stubborn or whatever, there are a lot of good points that our parents did give us. And that was one of them. And definitely when self-care, growing up, I had a grandmother that, oh, you should take care of your man, taking care of yourself is selfish. But I believe that if you don't take care of yourself, then you're going to burn out, and you are no good to anybody if you are completely burnt out.
Exactly.
So taking that time for yourself, whether that be, like you said, a walk, going for that walk, clearing your mind.
Yes.
I start my day off with exercise and meditation each morning.
Oh, yes.
Those are stuff that I didn't have growing up or didn't know about growing up. So I'm really glad that I was educated on that.
Yes.
And reaching out, definitely, if you feel like you're in those dark moments, reach out to somebody, whether that be a mentor or, if it's really bad, and you think you want to end your life, then definitely call the suicide hotline.
Yes.
There's one in Canada and the United States. So definitely reach out. But just, never giving up. I guess that's my biggest thing. Like, everybody's like, well, how do you keep going? I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm the Energizer Bunny, and my attitude is you just got to plow through it.
But that's your work ethic. That's your work ethic, because I have that same work ethic that was instilled in me. So I didn't realize that, but now that you're mentioning that, so that I think is kind of a key to just work through things, right? And overcome. So you're working through, right? Working through. And that's your strong will to just keep going and overcoming things. I think that too is, people don't realize, there's that saying, what's that saying? Today is another day, meaning there's all this stuff happening today, and tomorrow, I'm sorry, tomorrow is another day.
Yeah.
Meaning, today you could be at the bottom of the bottom, and then tomorrow, if you stick around for it, you could actually be at the very top of your day, because so many wonderful things could happen. So yes, I always try to repeat that to myself when I'm having a bad day. Tomorrow's going to be another day, and you just don't know what you're going to come up with. But I love that self-care thing. That is so important. People don't realize that. That is really important. I think if there's anything, whether it's, if even for people that don't need to overcome, but I think everybody needs to always overcome challenges, the self-care is a really important thing for everyone to remember that, and should always. And I love that you said you wake up in the morning, you exercise, you say meditate and do some things for yourself. I try to do the very same things first thing when I wake up, even if I have to wake up a little bit earlier than everyone else, I'll do it. So I have me time to take care of myself. And that's really, really important, because you probably agree, if you don't take care of yourself, then yourself isn't going to be there to do all of the other things that you need to do if somebody needs you to help take care of them, right?
Yeah.
So, but I love the self-care. That's a great tip. Taking care of yourself and first, and or making sure that you do take care of yourself. Any other tips or things you can tell us?
I definitely journaling. Journaling has been very therapeutic for me. Sometimes my friends call it like a brain dump. So
yes.
before you go to bed at night, definitely get your journal out, do your brain dump, get it all out, because like you said, the next day is a new day. Reset it. Yes. So all that negative is out.
Exactly.
So it's like a cleansing, I guess you could say.
Yes. I love that. And exactly. I do my journaling. I love to do it at night. It's kind of like a brain dump, right? You dump all this stuff in the thing, but I try not to, because, when you write things, it really kind of reinforces that on your brain. So I don't want to I try not to write things that are negative. I try to only write the most positive things, even if it means that I have to be my own coach. Like today wasn't that great, but tomorrow will be the best day ever. And sometimes I'll write that like 10 times. So I have that strength in me to know that tomorrow, I got to go on. Tomorrow is going to be a really good day. So I love that too. The journaling, it's a very same thing that I do. So the takeaways I think we're getting from this are self-care. Be sure to take care of yourself. And certainly, as we're saying, if you just can't and you need to get professional help, please reach out to someone. If you don't have a friend or somebody that, reach out to for professional help. I think now it's so easy. You can even go online, right, and find professional help. And then the journaling, and that's really helpful. People don't realize how, as you were saying, therapeutic. It is really therapeutic, very therapeutic. Something, again, it's so simple. Is there any other thing? So we have self-care, journaling, anything else?
And definitely, taking those vacations as well is like very important. As a recovering workaholic, there would be times that, I wouldn't allow myself that, and to allow yourself to shut down. Like, I try my best on Sundays not to do any work. And sometimes it's very hard for me to stay out of my office, let me tell you.
Me too.
But because it's so, I have so much going on during the week, so that Sunday would be great to catch up. But that day of rest is totally needed. And definitely for me, praying and meditation is key, because, I'm with the subtitle, Facing Challenges with Faith and Courage. I mean, God's gotten me through more bad days than I can ever remember.
Me too, yes.
And my faith is important, and leaning on him and praying my situation out is definitely key for me.
Yes, that's a great, definitely a great tip. And I was just going to say, because not everyone, just because of the time that we're in, not everyone can take a vacation so easily today. So I like what you said as far as, and I do this too, I'm not able to take a vacation where I'm going somewhere else. You can actually do a staycation at your own house, but obviously, like, maybe stay out of the office. Just do, if you want to do a staycation, do the things, take a day. Again, it's like self-care, right? Do the things that you enjoy for that day. If it's just shopping, take the time to go shopping. If it's cooking, maybe try a special recipe, do some downtime. If it's just, laying on the couch and kind of watching your favorite shows or films, do that. That's your vacation. And, it is a vacation for your mind and your body, right? So if you can't do what we think of the traditional going away vacation, just take time, again, it's self-care, but do a staycation at home. But I think those are all important points. So I'll point out what Dorothy's talking about and recommending: self-care. Definitely take care of yourself. Think about yourself. Make sure you take time for yourself as well as others. And journaling, and then the vacation or staycation. And I love it that you did mention your faith, because my, faith in God has gotten me through, just praying has gotten me through some very challenging times. So if you do have, faith that can also get you through that, God has gotten me through many challenging times. So, I think they're all important points, and I love all that. I think that's great. And hopefully, our listeners can take some of that into their own and adopt some of this into their own life. So Dorothy, how can people, we're just about out of time, but I want people to know where they can find your book, and say the full title again, please.
They can find it on Amazon and the name of the book is The Overcomer: Facing Challenges with Faith and Courage.
Great. So they can find it on Amazon. And do you have a website?
Yes. My website's www.unstoppableovercomers.com. And again, they can order the book through there as well. There's definitely some, if they wanted to book a discovery call with me as well, definitely book it through the website. Everything's right there.
Okay, great. All right, Dorothy Graham Odell, thank you so much for the interview. Thanks for joining us and listening to the Maria Liberati Show. And thanks to my producer, Britton Roselle, and this week's guests, Sousan Abadian and Dorothy Graham Odell. And don't forget, please share photos of the recipe I gave with this week's podcast, the torta de farro, the farro cake, and share it on social media, hashtag it the Maria Liberati Show, and you'll be entered in a giveaway for a drawing for a copy of one of my books from the book series, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking. And share a review, share the show with your friends, take a screenshot of the review, share it with the hashtag the Maria Liberati Show on social media, and again, you'll be entered in a giveaway for a copy of one of my books. And you can find The Basic Art of Italian Cooking anywhere books are sold online. And you can also find them at marialiberati.com and artoflivingprimamedia.com. You can also find me at Facebook, Chef Maria Liberati, on Instagram at Maria Liberati, on Twitter at Maria Liberati, on LinkedIn at M Liberati, on Pinterest at Maria Liberati, on the Maria Liberati channel on YouTube and Roku, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking by Maria Liberati. And until next week, peace, love, and pasta.